Welcome to the Villagers Studio channel. We are providing you the current news about Israel-Hamas war. For listen the updated news, like, share videos and subscribe Villagers Studio channel to avail war updates. Today's latest update of war is that, Israeli commanders among 9 soldiers killed in Hamas ambush. Senior officer from Golani Brigade dies after failed attempt to rescue injured troops in Shjaya area. 2 senior Israeli commanders and 7 other soldiers have been killed by Hamas in a complex ambush in the Gaza City suburb of Shjaya, an area that has seen intense urban fighting in recent days. The latest Israeli combat deaths came amid fears of a rapidly escalating humanitarian crisis in Gaza as heavy winter rains lashed the region and after reports by aid agencies of dwindling food stocks for the vast number of Palestinians who have been displaced to southern Gaza. Lieutenant Colonel Tomer Greenberg, a commander in the Golani Brigade, who had fought against Hamas during its attack on the southern Israel border communities on 7 October, was killed during a failed attempt to rescue 4 injured soldiers. In one of the most lethal incidents for Israeli soldiers to date in the 2-month-old war in Gaza, Greenberg and several of his senior officers were killed in fighting involving improvised explosive devices while they were fired on from buildings. Among the dead, announced by the Israel Defense Forces, IDF, on Wednesday, were another colonel, 3 majors and several members of a combat rescue force. A notice in Hebrew posted by the Golani Brigade described the ambush which occurred near Shjaya's market. While carrying out searches to clear buildings in the heart of the Shjaya Kasbah, considered a crowded area overflowing with terror targets, there was a large explosion in one of the buildings and several soldiers from the 13th Battalion were wounded, it said. According to accounts of the battle, the soldiers were approaching a building when they first came under fire from an upper story, initiating a firefight in which they were struck by grenades and an explosive charge, severely injuring 4 who were cut off from the rest of the soldiers. As soldiers went to help the first group amid fears they may be dragged into a tunnel, a second blast hit them. A third group tried to approach to evacuate the wounded and was also hit by an explosion. The ambush came despite daily claims by the IDF that it is close to having operational control of key Hamas strongholds in the north of Gaza. Greenberg had risen to public prominence after the 7 October attack, describing in an interview how he had rescued 2 infant twins whose parents had been killed by Hamas in Kfar Aza. Referring to the soldiers who were killed on Tuesday, the Israeli minister Benny Gantz said Israel was paying a heavy, painful, and difficult price. The ambush came amid unconfirmed media reports that Israel had started to pump seawater into some of Hamas's tunnel system. Asked about the claims, made in the Wall Street Journal, the U.S. President, Joe Biden, declined to directly answer, referring only to assertions that there were no hostages in the areas targeted. With regard to the flooding, I'm not at lib. Well, there are assertions being made that there are no hostages in any of these tunnels. But I don't know that for a fact, Biden said. Amid growing pressure for a ceasefire, the UN General Assembly on Tuesday night passed by a large majority a resolution calling for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. 153 countries voted in favor of the ceasefire, 10 countries voted against and 23 abstained or were absent. On Tuesday, Israel and the U.S. had their sharpest public disagreement yet over the conduct and future of the war as the 2 allies became increasingly isolated by global calls for a ceasefire. The dispute emerged while Israeli forces carried out strikes across Gaza, crushing Palestinians in homes. Biden said he had told the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, that Israel was losing international support because of its indiscriminate bombing and that Netanyahu should change his government, which is dominated by hard right parties,